Welcome to this morning's summer session with the Tutors Association. Today we're joined by Laura Gregson and Charlotte Gator, and their talk is on supporting families and students with a transition to secondary. So I'll pass over to Laura and Charlotte now and they can get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte and we've got Laura here as well. We've both been working at Explore Learning for many years and Explore has been running for over 20 years. Thought I'd just give you a little bit of information about what we do before we start the session. So we tutor children in maths and English and we are focused on academic progress but also about the joy of learning and unlocking that joy for children, and part of that is looking at kind of the whole learning journey with them and the family and how we can support them. And one of the big transition periods is moving from primary school to secondary school. So that's why we wanted to do a session on that today. We've got a mixture of physical centres, so in groups, and also since COVID we've had an online offering as well, so we offer one-to-one sessions and some group sessions online for children as well, and we support children with exam technique practice for things like SATs and 11+ and the GCSE as well. But we've come today to talk to you about the transition from primary school to secondary school. I imagine there's people from different settings and with different levels of knowledge. So some people may have worked in schools for a long time before they became tutors and might be very well aware of the situation and know lots of year sixes that have moved up to secondary school, or you might just be starting out on your tutoring journey. So hopefully there's something in here for everybody. But if you've got lots of knowledge that you'd like to share as well, there's going to be opportunities where we're going to pause, use the chat box. If you've got ideas and things to share, please do, because we'd love to magpie some ideas as well. So this is what we're going to be covering today. And we're going to look at some of the challenges that the children see with the transition, so emotional, social and academic challenges that they might come across. We're going to look at how we can help each of these, how we can help with parents and carers. We've got some useful resources for you, and we've also got time for questions as well. So let's have a look at these three main areas first. So emotional, social and academic challenges that children may find. I do want to caveat this session with the fact that lots of children might just be really excited about going to secondary school, and we don't want to put any kind of worries or fears onto the children. We just want to be there to support our families and the children that we're working with. So if they have got any concerns, that we can be there with an extra sounding board and an extra resource for the family to help with this type of change. So let's have a look at some of the emotional situations first. So I was having a look at some of the research alongside what we find from our children at Explore. I wanted to see what other settings and other bodies have found. And Place to Be, who are a mental health charity for children, did a survey. And they found that 1/3 of children worry about the transition up into secondary school. But interestingly, the STAR study, which was done by Cardiff and UCL, actually a higher percentage of the parents and carers had concerns about the move as well. So it's balancing that relationship between the children's concerns and the parents' concerns and being able to help them both. In the same study, they did say that most children had some kind of concern. So it was a different study to the Place to Be study. But actually, as soon as the children moved into secondary school and got started, that those fears started to reduce quite rapidly, which is good to know. So some of the things that the children might come across or feel is they might have some anxiety and fear. I'm sure that's not a new concept for you, but they might worry about things like navigating a larger school site, meeting new teachers, making new friends, understanding the new routines in the school, and these might be some of the things that are playing on their mind before they move up. They also might have some concerns over a loss of familiarity. They've been at primary school, possibly like most of the children have been there since reception or even preschool. And so they're very familiar with that site, with the people that are there, and they're moving into a new setting. They might get some similar feelings to like homesickness. If you've ever felt that, if you've been away from home for a long time, they might be feeling a similar kind of sense of loss. by moving to a new school. And also we've seen children with self-esteem issues. They've gone from being kind of the top of the school, the oldest children in the school, and then they're going to move into this much bigger setting normally, with different children, older peers, that they might feel a little bit worried about fitting in. So what can we actually do to help? So, I mean, this isn't rocket science, but just start with asking some questions, opening up the conversation, so that the children know that you're there and you can talk to them. Ask them about how they're feeling. Ask them if they've had a transition day, how it's gone, what they learned, who they met, so that they just know and are comfortable with you to ask questions about what's going to be happening. The other thing that I like to do is encourage the children to identify their strengths. If you feel like they might have some self-esteem concerns and issues, if we get them to identify what they're really good at, what their strengths are, what they're taking into this new journey, then they can feel really good about that and feel good about themselves, and they're thinking about what they can do more than what they can't do, or what might be concerning them as well. This third one about making themselves big, I've actually stolen from Ted Lasso. Don't know if anybody's watched it. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. But there's a character on Ted Lasso called Rachel, and she is a football owner. She owns a football team in a world where there's lots of men involved in that situation. So she's often going into a meeting where she's the only female there, and she wants to boost her confidence to feel positive about going into that situation. So the character, before they go into meetings, before they go into situations where they're feeling a little bit nervous, they find a private space, they get up on their tiptoes, they make themselves really big, so that they can feel really confident. And we've done this with our members as well, about thinking about your body language and how that can help you to feel confident when going into a new scenario. And there's a TED talk by Amy Cuddy that is quite similar. It's about power poses, and thinking about your body language helping you in those situations. And we ran a workshop with our children, and we got them to do those power poses, to be superheroes, to stand up if they could and feel confident about themselves. So it's like starting that belief in themselves. So if they do go into a new situation, any new situation, it might be going into school, but it might be a different situation, just thinking about taking a deep breath and having the confidence can help. And we also linked it to some situations that they might relate to as well, or they might understand. For example, like some celebrities have to do this as well. So we were talking about Beyonce has got an alter ego that's Sasha Fierce, and they connected with that and they understood who that person was, and they were like, whoa, there's this really confident person. We see this person on TV and we think that they're super confident, and they just think everybody might be super confident in situations, but even people who have to be in front of everyone for their jobs all the time sometimes have to fake it until they make it. So being able to give children that confidence and to empathise with their situation can be really powerful as well. And then the last thing in this section that we suggest to children is that we give them some practical techniques that they can do if they're feeling a little bit anxious or a little bit stressed. We actually give them some breathing and well-being activities that they can do to help them. So I thought we could all have a go now. So the first one that we have is about drawing a figure of 8. So you need to use your palm for this. And the key to it is about doing it really slowly. So you want to draw a figure of 8 on your hand, but nice and slowly. And when you're at the top of the 8, you want to breathe in. And when you get to the bottom of the 8, you want to breathe out. And it just gives the children an opportunity to calm down, to kind of re-regulate themselves. So if they are getting a little bit nervous, often the first thing that happens is that you can get a bit panicky with your breath. So just giving them this technique can help them to calm down. And so I think that's quite a nice one to do. And then the second one that we've given them is about squeezing lemons. And I mean, this one can help as well if, you know, it's not so much about breathing, but if they are feeling nervous, they might want to do this. But I think it's particularly helpful if you start to feel a bit stressed and you need to redirect that kind of almost like stress energy, or if children are getting a little bit angry, this can really help. So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you've got half a lemon in your hand, and you're going to squeeze it really, really tightly in a minute when I say. Imagine you're going to make some lemonade and you want to get all the juice out of that lemon. So, okay, let's go. Squeeze it really tight, squeeze it really tight, really, really, really tight, and then relax. Okay, hopefully your muscles are feeling a bit more relaxed now. We're going to do both hands now. You've got both half of the lemons. They're going to squeeze it so tight as you possibly can. Feel all your arm muscles squeezing. I want to hear those shoulders. Feel those shoulders squeezing, and then relax. And I think this one is a really good one. Well, both of them actually. You can just do on the spot and in the moment. You're not having to go anywhere. You're not having to like find somewhere to lie down to calm down. You can just do it in the moment. So some of our members have told us that they did it when they were in a test and they were feeling a little bit stressed. They just did this, and then it relaxed them. The hands got relaxed. They got a little bit more chilled, and then they could refocus on the exam. So some practical techniques that we could do there as well. If anybody's on the call and they want to share anything that they have done with any of their children that they work with to help with any kind of emotional challenges that they might feel, please do pop it in the chat. Laura's keeping an eye on the chat as we go along, and we're going to do a little bit of a switch around, and I'll take over the chat box a little bit. So if you've got any suggestions, please do share them, and then we'll keep sharing them with the rest of the group as well. Okay. Laura, do shout if anything's in the chat box, because I can't see it right at this very second, but I'll carry on with the social challenges that the children might face. So we've got a bit of data to back up some of the challenges that children might see here as well. So there was a survey by the National Parent Survey by Parent Kind, said that 33% of parents were concerned about bullying, according to their survey. So there's definitely some social concerns with that moving up into a bigger environment. And back to the STAR study that Cardiff and UCL did as well, is that the children did have some concerns around friendship, discipline and homework, and these things actually took a little bit longer to reduce. Even once they'd gone into secondary school, there were still some worries and concerns about these for longer than other areas. And the children said that their friendships changed considerably across the transition to secondary school, inevitably, because they're moving into a different setting with different people. And I think that that's one of the biggest concerns when we talk to our members. They are worried about leaving their network and their security blanket of the friends that they've got already. And you know, they might have one or two of their friends that are moving up to the secondary school with them, or maybe none, and they've got to navigate making these new friendships, which they might not have had to do for a while. Also, we have the concerns around bullying and peer pressure, which we can see the parents have that concern there as well. And children, they might have been to the transition day, but they might not know very many people that are at that school, and they might be playing through some scenarios that they've heard of things that have happened in the secondary school. So it's really important for us to talk like openly with the children about those, so that we can help them with that anxiety as well. And then also, when you go into a new setting in a new school, you've got to think about adapting to new social norms. There will be things that would just be expected of them in their primary schools, and things that they're very used to, things that they're allowed to do, that maybe once they move up into a different school, you're not allowed to do those things. There might be certain places only some year groups are allowed to go, or there might be things that they were allowed to bring into school that they're not allowed to bring into the secondary school as well. So they've really got to get used to what is accepted, what's allowed, what behaviours are allowed in the new school. So these things can all be playing on the children's minds. So again, what can we do? I think a really key thing is that we empathise with how they're feeling. We've all had changes in our lives. We've probably all moved from primary school to secondary school, and can hopefully think back and remember the things that happened. So like, can we talk to them about things that we got out of moving to secondary school? Have you got friends that you've made for life and you can tell them a little bit about, or some of the things that you've done that are relevant for an 11-year-old to know about. Like, are there some things that you can make them feel confident about and happy about because they're things that you've done as well? Just sharing a little bit about yourself can be helpful with it as well. And then the other thing that we can do, and I think this obviously is dependent on your setting, because some of our children come into a tutoring centre where there are lots of other children there at the same time. And we try and connect the children with peers from the school that they're going to. So actually some of our tutors may be in the sixth form at that school, or they may have attended that school before, so they can tell them a little bit about it. And we also have children who are coming to our tuition centres that are already at those schools. So we try and introduce the children so that they know some people that are already there, they can ask them some questions, they can tell them a little bit about it. But that might not be relevant for all your settings, and we can't do that for our online one-to-one members either. So some other things that actually some of our parents and carers have told us about things that they've done is some people have gone into like Facebook groups, like local community groups, or like sometimes there's local neighbourhood WhatsApp groups and things, and they've messaged to ask if there's any children who already go to that school, any families of children that already go to that school, and have arranged to meet up. Or other things that they've done is they've tried to find out at clubs that they go to if there are older children that are in those clubs, like, do any of them already go to that school? Can they introduce their child to them? So they've got a familiar face there. And sometimes the siblings of other friends already go to that school as well. So just trying to build up a little bit of a network for those children before they start into the secondary school, so they can feel a little bit comfortable. On that first day, they can see a friendly face, and that can be really helpful there as well. We've got any suggestions in the chat box? Yeah, Laura.
Classic, I was on mute. Not yet. We've not had any suggestions come through yet, but I'll keep an eye on if anybody does want to add anything, or if anybody's got any questions, please do feel free to pop them in.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, well, I'll move on to some of the academic challenges and what we can do to support. So going back to the National Parent Survey by Parent Kind, 1 in 3 secondary school children reported last year that exam or homework related stress was a concern for them, linked to their academics. We've also done some surveys of our families, and 75% of the Explore Learning families surveyed worried about children going backwards in the summer holidays, and that's even more significant with that move from primary school to secondary school, where there could be a leap in the academic work that they'll be looking at in September, and there's some concerns around that. And then also we've had some families who've actually given us feedback on how we've supported them, so it's always nice to get some positive feedback from the families, and this is one of them. So one parent said, "Just love the way that they have helped my daughter get a better understanding of the work that she's doing at her new school and how far she has come since being with them." And so that was one of our year 8 parents gone through the transition with us. Thinking about how we can set that up to really support them. Because when they move into school in September, there is going to be increased academic expectations for them. And if there's anything that we can do to support them with that, help them to understand that there might be a little bit of a jump, and to help them with new things that they might see, that can be really impactful. There's possibly going to be new teaching styles as well. They're going to have different teachers for different subjects. So the different teachers within the school might have different styles, or they might use new techniques or methods to what they've been used to in primary school. So being aware and understanding of that change is really important. And then also, children might find their organisation skills are really tested when they move up to secondary school. They might have been in one class the whole time, or maybe switched for a subject or two with a different teacher in primary school. But now they're going to have to move to lots of different locations, have different books, look after all their stuff, their keys for their locker, and all sorts of things that they've got to think about. So it's thinking about how we can help with that as well to support their academics. So again, we've got a few suggestions here. So getting ahead of the curriculum, giving them a bit of a head start, encouraging them to continue doing tuition throughout the summer, so that they're still in the practice of doing work and looking at things, so it's not a big shock for them when they come in September. I mean, you probably get the same thing, but lots of our children come back in September if they've had a break over the summer, and their wrists really hurt when they start writing because they haven't done any writing for 6 weeks or so. So just keeping them ticking over and keeping them like on the ball over the summer can be really helpful, and just exposing them to some of the things that might be coming up in September, so they've already had a little bit of a head start, and can be really helpful for the settling in process. We also like to set some goals with them, like what would they like to achieve when they get into secondary school. You can tell them some of the academic goals that, I mean, whichever subject you're teaching them in, like what are they really focused on, what would they like to achieve, but is there also a personal goal that they would they like to be able to be a bit more organized or get a little bit more confident in speaking in front of people and things, find out not just the kind of academic thing but the whole person. Well, how can we help them? I think also, again, just letting them know that you're there, you're an extra point of support, you're a constant that hasn't changed if you've been tutoring them in year 6 through to year 7, and then that you're just going to be there to help with any new challenges. And also just encouraging some organizational skills. So summer is kind of a low pressure time, I guess, for them to try out some organisation skills where it doesn't matter so much. If it goes wrong, it's quite low risk. So could they do something like organise a day's activities for their younger siblings, or organise what's going to happen for dinner that night and cook it if the parents and carers will let them free in the kitchen. Or it could just be something simple like they go and get some books out of the library. It's their responsibility to return them before the deadline. And like, can they do that as well? Just giving them some small bits of responsibility to help with those organisation skills as well. So we've come to the end of our first section. Like I said, if anyone has got any suggestions that they want to add, please do. But for now, I'm now going to pass on to Laura, who's going to look into a little bit more detail of some activities that we've actually done with our parents to help them.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Charlotte. Now oh, perfect. Are you going to be my...
I can be your next slide, please. Just call me Chris.
Thank you so much. Okay, yes, so as Charlotte said, I'm going to take over now and have a little bit more of a look at how we as tutors can support our parents and carers. Of course, your setting and the resources that you have available to you may well impact what you can provide for your parents and carers. So what we've done is we've put together just a variety of suggestions, and so hopefully there is something there for everyone. Our first one is creating some blogs or some vlogs for your families. So just that kind of recording some really short videos that you can use on your social media pages, or if you've got a website, you can pop it on there for families, or you can just simply share with your families, you know, to their personal emails or things. But once you've got this resource, it's a really nice resource that you can then share with multiple people over years. And it's something that we do quite a lot. Obviously, you know, I'll go on to talk about more like handouts and things, and they can be really great and useful. But for some families and for some people in general, that idea of just being able to watch a quick 2-minute video with some top tips on, for example, the transition to secondary or anything, it lands really well with some people. The next one is webinars. So just like this session today, we run lots of webinars for our families and our students. So we sometimes do it where families can join us together with their children. Sometimes we do them separate where just the parents and carers join, or just the students join. But it's a really nice way to get the students involved in that transition. Again, be able to share some top tips with them and some strategies to support them with the transition, or of course, whatever it is you kind of teaching them at that time. Handouts. So it's almost similar to the blogs and vlogs that you're creating content for. So things like instead of doing a vlog or a blog, you could do some kind of top tips document as a handout that could either be printed and handed out to your families or emailed out to them. And then, of course, we can signpost our families, so our parents and carers, to different places. We have popped a little link on, I don't actually think it's on this slide, I think it's later on. But we've got some links to things like the Young Minds charity. They've got a great post on how parents can help with secondary school transition. And it's a really great opportunity for you to do a little bit of research into what else is out there and just be able to signpost your families to some different resources that already exist. It's a really nice way to show that you've kind of done that research and that knowledge and support them in the right direction. And the Young Minds website is great. So it's a mental health charity, and the website is full of short videos and advice and information to give young people the tools to really look after their mental health. So I definitely recommend having a look there if you've not already. And then just simply having that conversation with your parents or carers. Just like you're that real constant for the students that you work with and the children, you can also be that person for your parents and carers as well. And a study by UCL and Cardiff Uni did show that 2/3 of parents and carers were worried about their child going to secondary school. So for them, just having someone to talk to about their concerns will be a huge support for them. And just like with the children, you know, I think sometimes speaking to somebody that's a little bit more distant sometimes, rather than like a partner or a family member, can be really nice. And then our final tip is just to be able to aid those conversations between the children and their parents or carers if parents are finding it a little bit tricky to get things out of their children. Again, sometimes children are just a little bit more willing to open up to somebody outside of the family. And I know in the past when I've worked with families that the conversations that I've aided sometimes have been absolutely ridiculous. I remember having to aid a conversation about a little girl refusing to wear trousers. She would only wear dresses and skirts. And mum was like, please, Laura, can you just have a conversation with her about, you know, what she wears? Because mum just didn't feel like she was getting anywhere with it. So we can just be that person to really support. Next slide, please, Charlotte. Thank you. Okay, so this is an activity that we actually did with some parents and carers in a webinar that we ran on SATs. So it's a session where we explained what the SATs results mean, and we looked at how they can help their child transition to secondary school post-SATs. So what we're going to do is just almost role play the activity as if we were doing it with our families today. So what I'd like you to do is just think of a time that you've gone through a change. So it might be when you transition to secondary school. It might be the start of a new job. It might be just simply meeting new people or going to a new gym. But I want you to try and kind of picture that time in your life and have a think about how you felt. And if you can, it would be great to share some words, some phrases in the chat box. I'll give you a minute to have a think. And then if you can put some words in the chat box, that would be brilliant. Thanks so much. We've got one saying cautious. Love that. I think, perfect. Excited but nervous. Thanks, Charlotte. Apprehensive. Absolutely. These are all feelings that are quite common when we're going through change or starting something new. Now, if you were running this with your parents or carers, obviously, you know, parents and carers absolutely know their young people best, and they are likely to know how they may be feeling. But of course, going through periods of change, we may need to adapt how we usually navigate these big feelings. So what we're going to do now is, if Charlotte could just click for me, perfect. Here are some of the changes your child can expect. And I'm sure you can think of lots more. And again, if you want to pop some responses in the chat box, you can. But some of the big changes and the big feelings might include things like a new school layout. Charlotte mentioned it earlier. Often it's a much bigger place, and it's a much bigger place to navigate and find your way around. I mean, I definitely remember starting secondary school and feeling so nervous between lessons about finding my next classroom. New friends. Again, from a personal point of view, I chose to go to a secondary school where I didn't know a single person. It was my choice, so I was absolutely nervous and apprehensive, but I was also really excited about that prospect of meeting new people, new teachers, more homework, and just that faster rate of learning as well. If Charlotte would just click for me, perfect. So of course, your child may feel some of these same feelings, and as it's a big change for families and parents and carers as well, we just want to reassure them that they shouldn't worry, and we've got some top tips to support them. So that's what we're going to move on to now, some top tips to support with these big feelings of change. So the first one is just to promote independence and confidence. So Charlotte's chatted through this one a little bit already in terms of that organisation side of things, but just really over the summer encouraging children to start to become a little bit more independent if that's a skill you think that they need to be working on. Set up a study space. So of course, what we want to encourage our parents and carers to do is make sure that their children have got a dedicated learning space within, obviously ideally within their home, so that when they are coming home with that additional homework that they may be a little less used to, they've got somewhere quiet and somewhere that they feel comfortable doing that extra studying. Test the journey and get into a routine. This is a really big one, I think, for parents and carers, probably more than the children. Obviously, if the children are going to be making their own way there, they might want to do things like test the bus journey and things like that. If they're going to walk, as a parent or carer, you can do that walk with them and make sure that they feel safe in where they're going. And of course, if you're doing the car journey, just testing that out as well and testing timings and things. I've got that to come in September with my little girl, so I need to suss out like where I'm going to park and things for primary school. So yeah, I think that's a good one to share with your families. Is that just gone off? Agree on before and after school routines. So as a parent or carer, just making sure that you're sharing with your children, what will happen before school, what time do you need to be up, what time do you need to leave the house to make sure you can get that bus or do that walking time, and then what will happen after school if you've got extracurricular activities and things like that going on as well. Embrace all the feels. So look for warning signs of stress or anxiety, and just really promote that conversation and those, being able to talk to each other about those feelings, and listening and supporting your child as well. Like, be their safe space and be that safe person for them. Of course, they'll have other people in their network, you being their tutor as one of them, and other people as well. But as a parent or carer, it's so important that they are that person that is their constant and their safe space as well. Get outside for some fresh air and exercise. This is such a big one. I just feel like it can be so underrated. But just that idea of releasing some endorphins, getting outside, bit of exercise, bit of fresh air. I know myself, I can feel, during a work day, I can feel so like, oh, and then I just think, no, definitely get yourself out at lunchtime, go for a little walk around the block, and I can feel so much better for that. And then our last two are just balancing the change. So with this one, it is a big change. Their school day is probably going to be different for one, but trying to keep things constant at times of change, just to really maintain that familiarity and that consistency. So thinking about what your current structures are and what you can keep within that current structure. So it might be that you know, for a parent and carer, their child is keeping up with some extracurricular activities that they've been doing in primary school or over the summer, and can that stay? Can that be one of their constants? For us, we talk a lot to our families about explore learning being one of the things that they can keep, and they can keep their same tuition time. Obviously, they can keep in contact with their tutor. So that tutor side of things, any family time, any time that they're visiting grandparents, you know, just really, really keeping those things a constant for them. And then finally, just to give them agency. So just making sure that they are taking some responsibility for themselves, and that as a parent or carer, it's not the parent and carer doing everything for them, but actually as a parent or carer, you're giving them that ownership of, and some responsibility for the things that they need to do. Now, I'm sure everybody on this call will have lots of ideas as well. So if you do have any other top tips that you would share with your parents and carers, please do feel free to pop them in the chat box as well. Okay, so this is just a slide. I mentioned it earlier. There's a few links on here to Young Minds. So this is just a slide with some useful resources. So alongside everything we do at Explore Learning to support our families, there is obviously lots of other things out there and a wealth of knowledge already out there. So we've handpicked some resources that we think are really useful and have been useful for the families that we work with. And of course, feel free to take a look and share these with the families that you work with as well. If there are any additional resources that you found that you found really useful, and maybe it's been useful for you as a tutor or for families that you work with, and you would be willing to share or you'd like to share with others, then please do feel free to pop them in the chat box for us to have a look at. And I think Charlotte's going to pop a couple of links in now, are you, Charlotte, into the chat?
Yeah, I don't think they're actually sharing as links, but
Okay.
You've got the names there, so I'm sure if you put them into a search bar, the relevant thing would come up.
Perfect. Okay, thanks so much. What I will say as well is, I know lots of people will be watching this as a recording, so you might have things that you'd like to share, or questions that we won't be able to answer if you're watching it as a recording. So if that is the case, feel free to reach out to us via email. I think we're going to, is it that they reach out to you as a Tutors Association and then?
Yes, yeah. If anyone watching this on repeat can contact me on info@thetutorsassociation.org.uk, and if you want any of these resources or have any specific questions for Laura or Charlotte, I'm more than happy to pass on your details to them and they'll get in touch.
Perfect, thanks so much. And then finally, what we'd like to leave you with is some feedback that we received from one of our GCSE families who started with us way back when they were in year 6, so pre-transition, and they transitioned with us to secondary school, and they've now come out of the other side of secondary school having completed their GCSEs. So I'll leave this with you to have a little read through, but just an opportunity to really shout, like to almost encourage you to shout out about what you're doing. So do gather feedback from your families, from your parents, from your students, gather that sentiment and then share it and really shout about what you're doing and all the amazing work that you're doing to support the children and parents and carers that you're working with. And we can leave that on for a second so you can have a little look through, but we can take this opportunity now just to ask if anybody does have any questions before we finish. Please feel free to pop them in the chat box, and Charlotte and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Very quiet on the questions today, it seems. I think there will be a lot of interest and a lot of questions from people watching this back, because it's a really interesting presentation and talk, and obviously really relevant. But yeah, did anyone want to ask Charlotte or Laura a question at the moment? If not, as I mentioned, you can contact me on info@thetutorsassociation.org.uk. I'd be more than happy to pass your information over to Laura and Charlotte, who I'm sure will be happy to kind of field any questions regarding this presentation or Explore Learning.
Thanks so much. Well, and for everybody that's joined, thank you so much for joining. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah,
Good
thank
luck
you.
supporting your students.
Thank you so much, Laura and Charlotte. As I mentioned, really interesting. And yeah, we really appreciate your time. And thanks for everyone who joined as well.